Today we will continue on the chapter. In the Tibetan, it's entitled The Stages of the Path Shared in Common with Beings of Small Capacity. And it begins in the English on the section called Mindfulness of Death. And that, I'll give you the exact page number. Where it begins is 144 in the English text. And okay, decent. That's cool. Decent. Decent.
Well, that didn't also do casual. That didn't. The Lamrim Chenmo the Lamrim is about Marba. Additional Lamrim is about Marba. Additional Lamrim Mongo the Lindo Dental Theoro. Chong did not choose for civil function. What the turned out the calculated Marba. That Chong did not choose civil function. Chong the Tungo Majima. Ding on the Tungo Majima, Chibi Majima, Small to what they take on the Tananga to Chongo, Chongo the Tungo Majima. What the Valley Marba.
So we will be, again, continuing the discussion of Lama Tsongkhapa's great treatise on the stages of the path to enlightenment. This text is a commentary on Lord Atisha's text, The Lamp for the Path to Enlightenment. And that text begins with a stanza that says, understand that there are persons of three capacities, small, middling, and great. I shall write clearly identifying their characteristics. So this quote is referring to various stages of the path. The stages of the path that are shared in common with beings of small capacity, the stages of the path that are shared in common with beings of medium capacity, and the stages of the path for beings of great capacity. And all of these stages are said to encompass all of the teachings of pronouncements of Lord Buddha, as well as the authentic Indian commentaries. So all of these are contained within these three stages of the path, and we're currently dealing with the stages of the path that are shared in common with beings of small capacity. So that's where we are currently. Okay, decent.
Lari Chimo the Lamrim markers on rebel at the Saji Dajina Munde. Chugunzum but Nemishin Zebabichevas, or the Adisha not at Legdoa, Chugunzum but Nemishin Zebabicheva. Dangala Kubaji Chujicheva Delta, Landela Subatazule, Nebatajin Game, Duala Subin, Chomo, is Madra. Then Nebatajin Game to Bicheva.
Nitsen.
Chawani didn't chula Nishita Sherba Marba, Chawani didn't chula Nishita Sherba, Jiba Damagun Romachita Tremba, Jiba Timba Jiba, Jiba de la Ranges of Washington, Bichuta, 10 and Lucida Janba, what is my lady Marba? She did to Taji, that then and Lucida Janba, what is my lady Marba?
Okay, so Lama Tsongkhapa's text, the great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment, is a commentary on Atisha's lamp for the path to enlightenment. And it begins with four specific categories. There's an outline of the content to come. The first is the greatness of the teaching's author, and here we find the liberation life story of Lord Atisha. The next section deals with the greatness of the teaching itself, and there are many greatnesses, such as understanding that all teachings are free from contradiction, or Namgyal are not mutually exclusive, and so on. So there are many greatnesses that are listed under greatness of the teaching. The next section deals with the great way to listen to and explain the instructions. And then the fourth section is how to lead students in the actual instructions. So that's the section that we're currently dealing with. And within that section, it begins with two categories: how to rely upon the teacher, that is the root of the path, and then how students train their minds once he or she has relied upon the teacher. So the stages of training that he or she engages in. So this is the section that we're currently dealing with, section 4, and how one trains in those stages.
다들 어떤 라는 저송을 가서 그래 다 제부 중도 통을 라는 저 덴드리 라서를 봐 덴드리 라 다다미 대상 투지기 라데 네 중도도 통을 라서 봐지 단딩 안 돼도 통을 라서 타바 투지기 라 안에 사지 고분투를 라 어디 제부송 라도 대인 말봐.
So these paths for beings of 3 capacities have 3 different results. So the stages of the path shared in common with beings of small capacity are pathways which lead to the higher realms. The stages of the path shared in common with beings of medium capacity or middling capacity are those pathways which lead to liberation. And the stages of the path for beings of great capacity are those pathways which lead to complete Buddhahood.
What that London 집에 있는 란지에 와서 공부되는 세계 사망의 줄을 와요. 그래서 말이야. 세계 사망을 보되 용가요. 용가요 주생 가르스나 안에 세계 사망을 상직 리기 쳐도요. 그래서 상직 리드다 안에 맞추 쉐바 미기 쉐바 나이 쉐바 나이 쉐바 지 쉐바 르 쉐바 이지 쉐바 어떤 때 나는 또 이지 쉐바를 잡고 말이야. 이지 쉐바 senjiraji wesawa dramanan lobo was eji shibatele sinje samag eji shibatele ne driba thaji moya ne bayuare chhe thaji shaya ne bayuare smarbe ne bayuare dendrul roya ne bayuare tabatu segurata tabatu ne bayuare saji gumuntu ne bayuare what this one is marbe.
All sentient beings can achieve these 3 capacities, the small, medium, and great. And it's because all sentient beings possess Buddha potential, or Buddha nature. So where is this? There are 6 different types of consciousness. There is eye consciousness, ear consciousness, nose consciousness, tongue consciousness, tactile consciousness, and mental consciousness. So the Buddha potential is the actual mental consciousness, abides or is the mental consciousness. It's a tricky way to translate it. The Buddha potential is among the mental consciousness, not the other types of consciousness. So the mental consciousness is really the chief consciousness or the head consciousness. And the mental consciousness is defined as that which is in the nature of clear light and not stained or not sullied. So the mind or the mental consciousness has the ability to have all of the misdeeds that it contains removed or abandoned, and the mind has the ability to achieve the state of all-knowing or the ability to comprehend all phenomena. So those abilities are present because of the nature of the mind, and all sentient beings possess a mind, so therefore all sentient beings possess the ability to achieve rebirth in the higher realms. All sentient beings possess the ability to achieve liberation, and all sentient beings possess the ability to achieve complete Buddhahood because of this Buddha potential, because of the mental consciousness that is chief among consciousness. Sorry if I repeated.
You should know that Hindu to John has a Kennego. Tango Namake, Joel Hamayo, Joel Hamayo, Joel Toma Meba, Joel Shimayo, Shaman Hammer so much.
Then ain't Gary Sompre.
They is on the Nijibichungu lawn and the new lawn, Tabi lawn, Sajigo to belong to the Kangalo, saying someone in my orders.
So in Buddhism, we state that the I itself has no beginning. There is beginningless birth. and that as far as future rebirths, there is no end to the future arisal. So there is no beginning to the arisal of the I, and no end to the future of the I. So in Christianity, in Hinduism, there is a differing view about this, but in Buddhism, there is this idea of beginningless lives. So because of these beginningless lives and the endless future arisals, the potential exists for the arisal of rebirth in the higher realms, arisal of rebirth, and arisal of liberation, and then eventually of complete Buddhahood. The Buddhism posits this beginningless arisal of the I and an endless future of the I.
다 집이 종어도 통은 라지바도 가르샤고 덴리 랑도 가르샤고 제바 이나 네 군주송라 저존주고네 네 먹이 주고 수진 강도 지도 송마도 바이나 디발 샤단 제바데 샤단 제바 이나 어디 덴리 랑스데레스 달라데네 밀치그레 살지고 송데서베.
So the pathways that are shared in common with beings of small capacity are those pathways which lead to the higher realms. Those pathways are going for refuge in the three jewels of the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, engaging in ethical behavior which abandons the 10 non-virtuous activities, and then if one does engage in a negativity or fault, wavers from that ethical behavior, then he or she must acknowledge his or her downfall or engage in confession. So by engaging in these practices, one can achieve rebirth in the higher realms of the gods and humans, and so forth. And these are the pathways shared in common with beings of small capacity.
radio batle deba do so res marba taba do namres taba do imba what tabala ma do ran do was deba dangerous tabala ma do ran do meba de ne tel ta doni so ba ta doni do lo what deme do lo de danzin do danzin de ane leg zaware nyomo bi zaware donge zaware yores na chuno da wo do ba shebe lo de denzin nyebun do re ane denzin de kaza ane le da nyomo ba to nyebun donge nyebun donge bo taba yo yores what is one thing that
the pathways shared in common with beings of medium capacity are those pathways which lead to liberation. So in the Sutra of the Heart of Transcendent Knowledge, there are many negations that are made. There is the no eye, no ear, etc. And so if we are looking at the I, what is being negated here is not the negation of the I's existence, but the negation of the true establishment of that I. The I exists merely as a name that is placed on top of a collection that serves as a basis for designation of a name. That basis being the 5 elements, the 5 aggregates, a collection of parts that come together and serve as this basis, and then there is a name. There is no I that exists inherently or independently from that name that's placed on this basis of designation. The grasping at the I as being truly established is what creates the karma and the afflictions. And then once the karma and the afflictions are created, then suffering is necessarily created. So at the root of cyclic existence, we find this grasping at true establishment that creates the origin or the cause of suffering, which is karma and afflictions, and then produces the suffering. So this grasping at true establishment is a mistaken view. It is as mistaken as believing that a rope is a snake in a dark room, mistaking that rope for a snake. And the only antidote to that mistaken view is the realization that it is a rope. So the only antidote to the mistaken view that grasps that true establishment that causes the karma and afflictions that cause suffering is the reality that things are not truly established, that phenomena are not truly established. The awareness of selflessness, the awareness of the lack of true establishment serves as the antidote to the mistaken view of grasping. And once the antidote to the mistaken view, which is the root of cyclic existence, is applied, then that which it produces, the karma and the afflictions, are abandoned, and therefore that which they produce is abandoned, the suffering of cyclic existence. And this is how one achieves liberation. So one relies so one relies upon the three highest higher trainings, and by doing so, one is able to achieve liberation, the highest higher training in ethics, concentration, and wisdom. And the concentration and wisdom being directed at the object of observation of emptiness. And that's why we spoke of the lack of true establishment and the emptiness of phenomena being the reality, and that awareness being the antidote to the mistaken view that creates the suffering.
Ta laba song la tenen nyomo batan dogen pontu war nyomo bacha pontu war man bacha de bon bala an chanchu sen dan doni de bishira ta de shero son re go war man ba an de bichil lanje de mal.
Okay. So by relying upon the three highest higher trainings, one is able to get rid of the afflictive obstructions and achieve the state of liberation, the karma and the afflictions. But the imprints of those afflictions cannot be abandoned by these trainings alone. It's necessary to have a union of the mind that aspires to enlightenment and the wisdom realizing emptiness. So through this union, one is able to get rid of the imprints of the afflictions, the obstructions to omniscience, and by doing so achieve the state of all-knowing, or achieve the state of complete Buddhahood. And these are the pathways that are for beings of great capacity, which are pathways which lead to Buddhahood. So now we'll go over these three capacities, persons of three capacities, persons of three capacities. So the lamp for the path to enlightenment contains all of the teachings of the Kangjur, the pronouncements of Lord Buddha, and the Tanjur, the authentic Indian commentaries. So all of these are contained within the lamp, and this is why Lama Tsongkhapa in the abbreviated stages of the path compares the lamp for the path to enlightenment to an ocean. He states that it's an ocean of illustrious instruction containing all of the spiritual classics. A synopsis of that quote. So Lama Tsongkhapa compares it to an ocean because all of the waters in the world end up in the great ocean, and likewise all of the pronouncements of Lord Buddha can be found contained within the stages of the path for beings of three capacities, of small, middling, and great.
ane landre inse toluare jayi toluare ane landre deba landin chambo inse toluare jayi toluare otetena te tanda kanten dunos.
So in the Tibetan language we do have the Kangjur and the Tanjur that's translated. So we have these texts in the Tibetan language, but these are not so beneficial if you don't read Tibetan or if you're unable to do so. But in English we have, and Chinese, we have both texts, Atisha's Lamp for the Path to Enlightenment, as well as Lama Tsongkhapa's great stages on the path to enlightenment, great treatise on the stages of the path to enlightenment. So we have both of these texts in English as well as Chinese, so we have the contents of both the Kangjur and Tanjur in our language, native languages, or in English and Chinese.
So if
you're already able to understand the contents or the meaning of the Lamp for the Path to Enlightenment, as well as Lama Tsongkhapa's great treatise on the stage of the Path to Enlightenment, then you will be able to understand the entire contents of the Kangjur and the Tanjur, the pronouncements of Lord Buddha, and the authentic Indian commentaries. So all of the sects of Tibetan Buddhism, Nyingma Kagyu, Sakya, and Gelug, have the stages of the path to enlightenment, the Lamrim. And among Lama Tsongkhapa's works, this is the most extensive, or the greatest work on the stages of the path to enlightenment, this great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment. And the Ngatsu She Changari okay, so we are, to really understand the meaning of this text, we would have to understand what Lama Tsongkhapa understands. And this would be quite difficult, but we're beginning our awareness or our understanding of this text now by going over it again and again. So we're beginning our understanding of it. So because it's quite in depth, we would have to know as much as Lama Tsongkhapa to say we truly understand this. If I missed anything in there literally, I apologize, but that's the meaning of, I believe, what Rinpoche said. So those who are listening may have understood things in the secular learning or regular learning, such as science and so forth. But this understanding of this material is a little bit different than the understanding of the almost like the intellectual, just intellectual topics. Or understanding this material is a little different than understanding material such as science and so forth. And so what we also are doing, I forgot from before, is leaving imprints of this information within our pacha, imprints or predispositions of this information within our continuum. Gongyame Bachi.
Okay, so
on page 144, this section begins with the major heading is the actual way to take full advantage of the life of leisure and opportunity. And there are three sections that are dealt with in that. First, training in the mind in the past shared in common with beings of small capacity. Then training the mind in past shared in common with beings of medium capacity. And then training the mind in the stages for persons of great capacity. So there are three sections under that major heading. So here the meaning of this is that training the mind in the stages of the path shared in common with persons of small capacity are those stages of the path which lead to the higher realms. Training the mind in the stages of the path shared with persons of medium capacity is referring to training in the stages of the path that lead to liberation. And then training the mind in the stages of the path for persons of great capacity are referring to the stages of the path which lead to unsurpassable, true, complete enlightenment, complete Buddhahood. Then the section beginning, so the first section deals with the stages of the path shared with persons of small capacity. And then there's 3 divisions in that section. The actual training of the thought for a person of small capacity, the measure of the attitude of a person of small capacity. Measure here is literally like measurement, but also like qualification is kind of implicitly within measure. And clearing up misconceptions concerning the attitude of a person of small capacity. So these are the 3 sections in the first section of the stage of the path sharing common with beings of small capacity.
나 제부 중국도 내송 동을 지시 짜네 내송 동을 내가 중국어스 어디 상바지 수지 되이지래 되네 내송 동을 내가 중네 내 가르도 거스나 하다메 내송 투하고도 보여와스 어디 하다메 내송 투하고도 봐도 어디니 제부 중국 상바지 말봐.
So the thought, the actual training of thought for a person. What is this of thought? This of thought is the wish to definitely emerge from the lower realms of cyclic existence, or to renounce the lower realms of cyclic existence, and the wish to achieve rebirth in the higher realm. So this is the thought, and down here it's speaking of this developing a state of mind. So that's the mind that it's referring to.
Pambulani, Jide Shema Dunye, Luciba dance, that Jib Chung Samba Jawatele, Jide Shema Dunye, Luciba, Latami, Tenzon Tuna never sound Dunjirva, Dunye Luciba dan, Jide Shema de Totembo, Jide Shema de Top, Jide Shema le, and Joa Shema le Dawayim Top, Totembas, what things are Marbe, Totembas, Totembas. Ore totem bahusa ta tombula ni marbe jiden shema tönye lo jiba sa de la ni je jiden de rin to mane ba chwa jesu temba samba dans jiden de rin to mane ba ta nga su nga se ya de nga sa ra ta ne ka su re nga se ya de ne jun yore de nga ma ta nga su de yo ba kanga lo tenba lo jan zang je de ma kanga shin ma ko yore ne ma keji ke yinga na shigo shin go ro jiden shema rin to mane ba chwa jesu temba sambas chwa ma da ba samba tin sa de ba je temba samba da jiden shema je dan ju lo ani je do do sambas da jiden shema je da chwa shema de da de lu dang ni yong ma and dibala ten ngandul chigre do gi lela ten dandul chigres what ni ku de madrium go yerba jide shema jedan ju do ani je du samba hosa na sung do nge ta de du de wa in je ba
ne son dan ju
o de du samba hosa
okay, so the actual training for the thought training of thought for a person of small capacity has 2 sections. Developing a state of mind that strives diligently for the sake of future lives, so directing at future lives and wishing to have rebirth in the higher realms in those future lives, and relying on the means for achieving happiness in the next life. So the method for achieving that happiness, the happiness of the higher realms. And so then the first section, developing a state of mind that strives diligently for the sake of future lives, has 2 sections. First, mindfulness of death, the contemplation that you will not remain long in this world. So here, this first section deals with the impermanence of impermanence and death, recognizing that one is dying momentarily, that the kg, there's a momentary disintegration that's going on. One will not remain long in this world. You can see those who have already passed on. One can only live to 100 years at most, and then one will certainly die. So there's a certainty that one will die, and the next section deals with where one can be reborn. So the next section says, contemplating what will occur in your future life. the happiness or the suffering of the two types of beings. So this is referring to the happiness of the higher realms or the suffering of the lower realm beings. So there are only two realms, if you break it into this way, translator's note, that one can be born into, the higher realms or the lower realms. So in dependence upon misdeeds, one is born into the lower realms into the lower realms, and in dependence upon virtuous activities, one is reborn into the higher realms. So here, first we're dealing with the contemplation of the impermanence and death, and then that one will not remain long, the certainty of death, and then what will occur in the future lives, and that there are only two experiences or places that one can be reborn, the lower realms and the higher realms. Decent.
Chewa jizu naba samba dila sachi jitigando jimarba. Chewa jamba magumbi nyemi si, chewa jamba magumbi nyemi ji, gumbi penyo ji, chewa jambi lu jitabu ji jebas, chewa jamba gumbi su sachi jitigando ji, sachi jitine, wadi sachi ji. Chewa jamba, ta chewa mataba de gungi ina penyo jirare, tanga shigiri nyaba sanlu matana, Nepa chibure sung marba, chewa matembi nyemi. Ne nga shigiri sambi chewa matabata matemba ina, tel nyemi mungu yunga yuwaris, jun mungu yunga yuwaris. Chewa matembi nyemi ji, gumbi penyo ji, chewa mataba gumbi penyo, chewa jambi luchi tabu shi jeba, chewa jamba gumbi suyu sachi jirwa. 다 담보 저 마데미 예미 공부스 예미 들라 대다 다이들라 헤블렘발라 주발라 신주로 jel레 네 마타발라 타반진비 신주로 로니 담보 네비 고조로스 워딩 사마르바 신주로 제트이 마르바 당아서 든동에 밥이 되고 든은 군주 밥이 되고 든은 고바 밥이 되고 너는 라파비 대지 말고 대지. 내가 지 나는 다 다음 동에 대지면 다 주주. 동에 대비 나바지, 군주 대비 나바지.
That's
아니 라댕 나바지, 고댕 나바지 주주로. 주주 나는 마다베 동에 대비 나바지들 마다 동해와 동와 다음에 봐. 이제 말봐. 어때 시주로제데 아니 로시제로서 보여다. 아니 다 동에 있는 다가 네 마타바르드로 마타발라 타반제 로로로시지 말바 마타발라 타반제 로로로시지 데왈라 동해와 제빌로데 루로시 님바제 마타 동해 동화 상유다 전신시 동화 상유다 전신시 모동화 제빌로데 시주로지 인지로다 되네 다 매발라 다도 좋은지로 말바
it.
아니네 봉부추 제마다바 인데 계지마 인베시 동화인의 상여 다든지 동요시를 안에 가서 동화인의 레뉴지 중앙진 인베시를 다음에 봐 인터랑 다 고마 두베시 당다 지고데 도 딩사마 대로슈 로시지 워드 지고 야
Okay. So where am I? So here we're on the section dealing with the first four parts: the faults of not cultivating mindfulness of death, the benefits of such cultivation, the kind of mindfulness of death you should develop, and how to cultivate mindfulness of death. So the first section is the fault of not cultivating mindfulness of death. So if one doesn't think of impermanence and death, this will keep one from being able to really practice. This will cause a barrier. It is faulty. And here in the text it says, as previously mentioned, there are four errors that impede your taking full advantage of your life. The impure to be pure, suffering to be happiness, the impermanent to be permanent, and the selfless to have a self. So here, this is looking at the 4 attributes of the First Noble Truth. In the Four Noble Truths, the Buddha stated that this is the superior truth of suffering, this is the superior truth of origin, this is the superior truth of cessation, and that this is the superior truth of path. So Buddha stated these 4 noble truths, and these 4 noble truths each have 4 attributes, so making for a total of 16 attributes of the 4 noble truths. And the First Noble Truth, having 4 attributes, the 4 attributes are as followed: the impermanence, suffering, selflessness, and emptiness. So here, this is referring to the basic opponents to, or the truths that are misperceived. So one's grasping at the impermanent as being permanent is a mistaken view. One's grasping at suffering as happiness is a mistaken view. One's grasping at the impure as being pure is emptiness here. So that's referring to when impure is referring to the impurity of something, is referring to its emptiness. So seeing it as not being empty, and then seeing something that is selfless to have a self. So these are the 4 mistaken views related to the First Noble Truth, and there are 4 signs that are given to prove this, that it is impermanent because of being produced occasionally. It is suffering because of being under the influence of contaminated actions. So if we were to use the subject, the appropriated aggregates as a subject for analysis. So if we said the subject, Nyelenji Pombo. So the subject, the appropriated aggregates are impermanent because of being produced occasionally. The subject, the appropriated aggregates, are suffering because of being under the influence of the contaminated actions and afflictions. The appropriated aggregates are selfless because of not existing as an independent self. They're influenced by impermanent factors. And the appropriated aggregates are empty because it is empty of a pure self that is different, or that is other. Different is this needs, different. So a pure self, meaning that word impurity that was used before is synonymous with emptiness in here. So it's because it's empty of a pure self. So something that is, there is no pure self, it's impure because it's empty. So these are the 4 reasons that are given to prove the first truth of suffering and its attributes. So this is dealt with in this first section that deals with the faults of not cultivating the mindfulness of death. So one needs to not think that I will not die. It's important to think that one is going to die.
다 주제 가서는 지금도 나한테는 뭐다봐 인도 계지만 인베시 제바 인베시 그 줄이 제바 인자 그 계지는 주나지만 주나지는 거라서 말이야 뭐다봐 인도 계지만 인베시 제바 인베시 주세 모산도.
So we also can just say something as simple as the subject I is impermanent because of being momentary. The subject I is impermanent because of being an arisal. So the subject I is impermanent. So it's looking at this impermanence.
당가 주 가서 동안인데 장유다 된지 동예시 다 시르바 속에 네 나데 장원이 장
Pure.
네 장유다 된지 장유다 네 what 시르바 속에 기는 거죠. 장유다 된지 동안 장유다 된지 동안 성들을 공부도 못 하대 동안 된지로다 동안 다음에 보니는 동안서 말봐 나주지 동안인데 장이다 된지 동 장이다 말어 장이다 된지 장이다 당 타대 동안
Lesso.
모집이 동안들 다음에 보자되나 라오다 뭐마도 베시
Tade.
야 지도 타대니
So the subject I is empty because it is empty of a pure self that is different. In other non-Buddhist traditions, there's an idea of a pure self, of this actual self that exists, a pure, unitary, separate self that's different. So here, this is negating that view of a pure self. It's negating it because of it being empty of a pure self that is different.
다 니네 공부 주의서 다들 가지고 거다 어떻게 말해. 니네 공부서는 가지고 공부 가도 말해. 공부 가지고 주의서 동아인데 상이다 전시 동아인베시. 상이다다 네 전시 타테바야 말해 공부지 말해서 말해. 동아인데 상이다 전시 동아예시. 다음에 봐인데 라고 다 공부 말해. 어디니 대말했다. 니네 공부 주의서 주진도 주도
So if we use the subject, the appropriated aggregates, so these 5 aggregates, the appropriated that were appropriated, pushed on us, these less literally, but these 5, the subject, the 5 appropriated aggregates are empty because they're empty of a pure self that is different or same. So they are empty of both of being a pure self that is one or other, chik tade. So if these terms being one with or other than. So there's no pure self that's one with it or pure self that is other than it. So that this is when we can use the subject I interchangeably, but when in this case we're using the appropriated aggregates as a subject.
So
these are 4 mistaken views that are being presented here, and their opponent. They're 4 errors. Errors here.
Dushignan Chodujubata, Matabin Dushidres, Jiganan Chodujubata, Lambachi Jesu Marva, Lambachi Jet Shishirota. Dushignan Yashut, Matabin Dushidres, Matabin Dushidi Abjonsuna, and the Sanlo Chud Kongota, Chugan Tigojota, Matabin Damu Matabasundua.
Then the Lamboche, J, Gare.
Jason, that the Lamboche Kamba to Jana, then the Bishop of Lamboche Jero, who could see each other and do the Chabro. Do she know the truth about the Matabin Dushetres, Namatabas Tavaina, or Tangashire, and then Church wounds on truth?
Oh, okay. So first the Buddha spoke of impermanence, because this is the grounding force compared to an elephant that is because an elephant is a very large animal and very heavy. It's compared to this grounding that first takes place, that one recognizes that impermanence, I am impermanent, and then one out of a understanding of this impermanence and momentary nature of things, then wishes to practice Dharma and so forth. So it's compared to the and I apologize if I'm making a mistake here, comparing to an elephant, like a grounded elephant, because it's the base where Buddha began. And speaking of impermanence, suffering, selflessness, and emptiness, he began with impermanence.
사지 주고는 담보디서 담보 신주로제래 마다발라 따반zembi 신주로니 담보 내비 군주로 되는마 어떻게 사지 주고는 담보들 해운서래.
So there's going to be 6 sections in here that deal with the faults of not cultivating the mindfulness of death, impermanence and death. So we're beginning with it says initially it is the conception of the impermanent to be permanent that is the avenue of much injury. Then tambo Tapamitapa.
사지 저거 나는 어디 담보도 인사래.
Okay, so this is the first among the 6 categories that we're going to go over.
신주 가서 마다발라 따반제비 신주로니 너무나 배고주로스 마다발라 따반제 소나 되네 가서 그래. 마다방 가시게 말해서 단지 뒤에박이나 되네 저와 셔만 펜지 도와 용하기시도 네 든리랑다 타비랑다 집이랑도 용고 말했어. 단지 되게 뇌네 대뇌네 네 저와 셔만 든리랑다 타비랑다 사지고 본토비랑도 그러지 말했어. 어떻게 담을 때 인사를
So if one grasps at oneself and believes that he or she will not die, if there's this idea that one isn't going to die, then there isn't this reason for pathways which lead to future lives. So then it won't be possible, if there isn't this awareness that one will die, to engage in the pathways which lead to higher realms, liberation, or Buddhahood.
집에 종을 준 딩기 주 집에 주도발라 너그레스 너비 군조로스.
So this grasping at the impermanent as being permanent is harmful to the dharma of small, medium, and great capacity.
너비 군조로 달라 차라니레스 다 따반집에 당진 달라 차라니 말바 타와서 라바니 요아르스 달라 차라니레 라비 마다바 쳐와라 마치냐비 나버토바니 내비고사 다 단지 라바도 참니 용을 말봐 달라 차라니레 라비 마다바 안는 아주 쳐와도 라비 마다바 얘기로 컴발로바다 모라다바다 마셔와 와도 놀로 쳐 라비 마다바 얘기 말봐 라비 마다바 달라 차라니레 라비 마다바 쳐와라 마치냐비 나버도바니 내비고스 어떻게 당하시게 말이냐고 살다마 있나 되게 너그래 가를 너그래 집이 중을 나다 딩글하다 집이 라냐네 집을 너그래 내비군조 내비고사 어디서 말달 라비 마다바도 차이 마다바송도 당아 마시냐비 살루다 단지 라바니 말버와 단지라바로 당하수 가지고 다 차이 마다바데 추구는 제뒤네 kunju keji juare dioro marbe
keji tambo keji nipa
keji tambo dioro nga ngebaro dein sanna
leso
wote 단지 참도 어떻게 해서 말해 맞다봐 참고
leso
keji tambo 돼서 네 데인사 주 말봐 가진 봐 어떤지 어때 맞다봐 참고
leso
어떤 가진 뭐 많이 받을 단지 참을 자고나 메셔와 컴바 로바 모르다부터 라바이로 말봐 차라니
leso. So initially it is merely the conception of the impermanent to be permanent that is the avenue of much injury. This conception is twofold, coarse and subtle. Of these two, in the case of your coarse impermanence, which is your death, the avenue of injury, is the very thought, I will not die. So here, if we're looking at coarse and subtle impermanence, coarse impermanence we can recognize. We see houses degenerate. We see cars that fall apart or have an accident. We see human beings who die. So we see this coarse impermanence, and this is what it's referring to when we see this word coarse, the coarse form of impermanence. Subtle impermanence is referring to the moment of something's is caused and arises, it begins to disintegrate. The process of dying begins at the moment, the first moment of arisal. So this momentary disintegration, this process of momentary, this dying, is the subtle impermanence. So each moment that passes is this disintegration that's taking place. So the moment of arisal begins the dying. process, because as each moment ends, another moment begins. So one is disintegrating. So this is the subtle impermanence. So this is coarse and subtle impermanence. Then that's the Sanchu.
Yeah, okay.
So we're going to take a short break.
Tamadabala Tarani, Taba Tanzi letter, Tarani Zibuloda, Tarani le, Rabbi Madaba Chola, Machinaba, Rabbi Madaba, Rabbi Taba, Rabbi Madaba Chola, Machinabi, Nabatubani Nebukosa.
So there is coarse and subtle impermanence. Therefore, the grasping at the permanent as the impermanent as being permanent has coarse and subtle grasping. So that's why it says the conception, this which is the grasping at the impermanent as being permanent. So here it's just modified to the conception is twofold. So there are coarse and subtle forms of that grasping.
Jeba Hindu, Jebi Tuso, Madaba Trudu Horis Marba. Tama Jeba Tru, Shugo Madaba Trud and Radio Maris. Jeba Kuno, Trudu ne Madaba Trudu Horis, Madaba. Trudu Horis. Jula Raji Cheche, Menaman Jabuna, what is Sugo Marba. Jukunogi, Debut Jeba Tene, Madaba Trudu and Matu. Tama Je, Tenekeji Gana, Madaba Shugo Truba Maris. Madaba Jebi Tuso, Daisa the Dabin, Keji, what the Chamadu.
So we are the Natsu Pama the Jepo, the Rapa.
Jewa is not Mahobarava. Jeba, Simba. Simba Tuso, and Madaba True Synthesis. Jeba can true, Sheban can true, Madaba Shugu Batan Maris. Jeduna, Madaba True.
So the subtle form of impermanence begins right at the moment of an arisal. So we are our parents, a result of our parents. So at the moment of our birth, which is a past statement, our birth, we previously were born, at that moment we begin our disintegration. So we begin the process of dying at the moment that we are born, which is a product of our parents. So this form of impermanence, which is the dying process, the momentary disintegration, each moment, kg, moment by moment, one moment ends and then another starts and then another moment ends. There is a process of dying that's taking place. So this is the subtle impermanence. And so grasping at that is grasping the conception of this permanent as being impermanent as being permanent.
다주 처와시 용ኛ바네 군라여장스 다주 처와시 용와네 군라여와스 군라여장 냐마르지 드림메치 냐바데 네 마시 선실 용그레스 마르바 나지징아 셰그르 막강가시로 거다시드 anga 나지 셰그르 삼바데 강갈여와스 레데 이나야 냐마다발 다른 가시로 마르 다른 가시로 마르 삼바데 마시바도로 데 용그레스데
Less so.
Yeah.
It says everyone has the idea that death will come later at the end. However, with each passing day, people think, I will not die today, I will not today, clinging to this thought until the moment of death. So there is this, we all know that we are going to die. So the idea that we're going to die is there. But there is this idea that we have that it won't happen today. Today will not be the day that we die. And we go on believing this as each day passes. Today will not be the day I die. Today will not be the day I die. And then eventually we get to that day, and we're at and we cling to this idea until we actually are at the moment of our death. So we have this idea that we are not going to die now, that it's going to be at some later time down the road in the distance.
What did
So grasping at this impermanent as permanence is this believing that I will not die today, I will not die today. This is a form of that grasping. Bajila, Sensene, Jiden Shemanda, Tabadan, Tanji Shembala Subi, Tenchembu Tala, Number Jubi, Gob Machivi, Chula Jubi, Chula Jubi, Loche, Metelas, what the Sajiniba things, Sajiniba. Tabanzi with Tanzi, the Niebut Maguna, then Kazure, that Tabi Long, Dundry Long, or the Sukolo Woman who did this, they know this. So now we're getting to the second point that's made. So this first point that's made is dealing with the grasping at the impermanent as being permanent in the coarse and subtle level. So the next point that's being made deals with the remedy or the antidote. So it says, if you are obstructed by such an attitude and do not bring its remedy to mind, you will continue to think that you will remain in this life. So one must apply some sort of antidote to this wrong way of thinking, so there won't be any kind of obstruction to practice, obstruction to the achievement of higher realms, liberation, and omniscience. The remedy for the grasping at the permanent grasping at the impermanent as permanent is meditation upon impermanence. Just as the remedy for the grasping at true establishment is the awareness that things are not truly established, just as the remedy for grasping at true establishment is understanding that things are not truly established, the remedy for grasping at the impermanent as permanent is meditation upon impermanence. So then, as long as you have this attitude, which believes in the impermanent is permanent, you will continually think only of how to achieve happiness, evade suffering in this life alone, thinking, I need this and that. You will not engage in religious practice because you do not think about things of great importance, such as future lives, liberation, and omniscience. So if one doesn't apply the remedy being meditation upon impermanence, then one will only focus on the things of this life, and this will create a barrier to one's ability to achieve good results in future lives, liberation, and omniscience. It says, because you do not think about things of great importance. One will be thinking only of things of this life if one doesn't meditate upon impermanence. So the second point is about applying a remedy or an antidote.
Tanzi de nyebu yila majiba ina tanzi de drine ane tanzi san ko de central deba mashiba de deba ha ku san dang go ro an de dul kamba go re ane mota go re de momo san dan sendi san ko ne ane dendu ta taba dan wa de so ke
So if we're just thinking about this life's wants, we want a house, we want a car, just thinking about the things of this life, then we won't put things on, we won't think about things that are important, such as our future lives of liberation and omniscience. So we will only be thinking about things of this life if we have this grasping at the impermanent as being permanent and don't apply a remedy. So if we don't, the not applying the remedy is the second point, that we need to apply this remedy or antidote.
So
the third point is, if one does not apply a remedy or antidote to the grasping at the impermanent as being permanent, then even if one does engage in studies, a reflection and meditation, it will not be a means for achieving. It will be of meager strength. It won't be very powerful, and it won't be a means of achieving higher realms, liberation, or omniscience. That's the third point. Moreover, since your practice will be involved with wrongdoing, sins, and infractions, it would be rare for those virtuous activities not to be mixed with causes of miserable rebirth. So if one doesn't apply an antidote to the grasping at the impermanent as being permanent, then there will be a barrier or an obstruction to one's ability to achieve rebirth in the higher realms, achieve liberation, achieve omniscience. It will serve, even if one does engage in study, reflection, and meditation, it will be of meager strength. One will not be able to achieve the wisdom arisen from hearing or the wisdom arisen from contemplation and so forth because of this grasping and the lack of antidote applied.
The
fourth point is about laziness. The lelo it's about laziness. Even if you try to engage in practices directed towards future lives, you will not be able to prevent the laziness of procrastination, thinking, I will do it eventually. If one doesn't apply the remedy to the grasping, so this is the fourth point that's coming up now. So if one doesn't apply the remedy to the grasping at impermanent as being permanent, one will have an obstruction to the ability to achieve higher realms, liberation, and omniscience. And then if one does engage in study, the power will be of meager strength. It won't be very powerful. And then one won't be able to, as a result, prevent the laziness. So one will think that, oh, I will just do this later on. I will eventually get to it. And then if one does does not do this, one will be swept away by the non-virtuous activities, or by engaging in misdeeds of the body, speech, and mind. The 10 non-virtuous activities. 3 non-virtuous activities of the body, 4 non-virtuous activities of the speech, and 3 non-virtuous activities of the mind. One will engage in these quite frequently. And the 5 heinous crimes, such as killing one's parents. So, NGK Lo or Jemo Ngatsu Lo? Okay, so then it says, I'm going to just read everything here. I will do it eventually. By passing time in distractions such as sleep, lethargy, senseless talk, and eating and drinking, you will not attain proper achievement, which comes through great effort. So that was the 4th point. And then, if you are thus seduced by the hope that this body and life will last for a long time, we will create strong attachments to goods, services, and the like. As if swept away by the current of a river, you will be immersed in strong hostility towards what prevented you, or what you fear might prevent you from having these objects of attachment, and delusion that is ignorant of their faults. And as a consequence of these 2, an affliction such as pride and jealousy, as well as strong secondary afflictions. As a result of this, you will do more non-virtuous activities each day, such as 10 misdeeds of body, speech, and mind, and the 5 deeds of immediate retribution, other misdeeds approaching these in gravity, and the repudiation of the and the repudiation of the excellent teaching. I'm sorry if I'm reading too far. All of which have the full potential to induce strong suffering in places such as the miserable realm. So one will engage in the non-virtuous activities.
수저바 마지막에 뭐서 자와지로 안은 로비 창통와서 나데
The Genye.
참에 어디 참에 방가로 대단 잡으진노
Lessa.
대단 영어 나데 수저바 마지막에 주인체 자와지제 옹글 창통바데 아이
Lessa.
그거는 어디 녀디 정도 녀디
Ale.
도샤로 가서 진짜로 어디 제사샤
Lessa. So, in the 5 deeds of immediate retribution, which are also called the 5 heinous crimes, refer to killing one's father, killing one's mother, killing an arhat, drawing blood from a Buddha, or dividing the Sangha. So these are the 5 heinous crimes. Then there are also the 5 hell, nyawanga. 5 hell. Hell. It's similar to the 5 hell. It's similar to the 5 deeds of immediate retribution, and it's the 5. I want to anyway. I don't have time. It's the 5 hell, and these would be referring to the 4 root vow negativities of killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, and lying. These are the root vows, and then the secondary of drinking alcohol. So these would be the 5 hell. So I must say this in here. We find this in the 6th session Guru Yoga of Kala Chakra. We find this. So we can look then later very easily. The 5.
추는서봐 어느 어떤지 구속도된시바 나래요 자진도와 어디 딱이 더 제로지 영원하다 영원하다 담비 추봉바 담비 추봉글래 이제로 니셔지 뭐라 가서지 추는 로바타라도 추봉글래 이제 말이야 추봉하라서
네 이래가 Kakure. The Ama, the Mizampa Shuba, the Konda Jumba Yin, then Mizampa Shuba. Then Shanchu Semba Se, Nipa. Sumba
동사르베데
the somba yomar the larin chemo jalo
알레
kashe the
뭐 대잉을 듣는 대잉을
the teme lang gomlen the say the gomago the gendung gomago jipa the ngapa the control yona the gompa the chorten dan gompa the
어다 주주 다게 제루시 다
so we have to look. There are different in the back of the Lamrim Chenmo in the footnotes. There are 5 divisions also that are different. So Rinpoche said we can look into these various resources. So at the back of this we have some, and then in the 6th session Kala Chakra we'll find references, and it's similar to the 5 deeds of immediate retribution. The Lamrim Chenmo Nangla.
단지 예보이라 마제나 안에 텔레장 르당 나다 이제 녀셔 주던 디바 먹어 줘 말이야. 되는 참에 봐. 참에를 내용 그래서 되는 영화 용 그래서 담비 추봉을 사바 되는 용 그래. 라수비 먹이래 난루라수비 등에 잡고 담바시 봐. 투표도 중화사 내손 지게 디비래 내가 쳐 용 그래서 단지 예보 맞나?
So if we don't apply this opponent or an antidote to the grasping at the permanent, the impermanent is permanent, then we will readily engage in non-virtuous activities such as the 10 misdeeds and the 5 deeds of immediate retribution.
what diba magi tanzi nyebo madena diba magi wate topu de jon neba chibu yongres what is one is
So these negativities will have a great power to induce suffering.
다 tanzi nyebo ila majiba ina ti nyebo ane teda gi nyebo leba son bisa tene ta nyebo gri mo mo ngro ta dungwa la dewanzi bi nyebo la so ba nyebo ga ba je ma res nyebo gombala nyebo duzla jaje cheshu sones ta nyebo no ma da ba gwa ta wa den sha ju sen gwa ta je bu chung la gwa ta ding la gwa tu den ja shu na ko san le ya bu ko ma res jaje cheshu sone ngoto 당엘에 제 수지대사 어떠세 아무마로나 ngoto 제가 말해 타바토 말어 타지샤바토 말해 수지는 그래서 수지대 나로 등에 자진做了 차신 이도 뭐 내서 어떤 내송 제에서 송대서 말봐 체니와 존에 랭에비 트바 셰베나 텔레마로바 고치시여사 아니 제자분 장운도 제자
야와
다가데 단들이 냐고 마데나 아니 소제빌레 네바 쳐용 거래 마지발레 네바 쳐용 거래 아니 와테 디바트 걸로 르지레 나바송하게 나바시 예지 나바송도 투표도 중앙 네바 쳐용 거래서 대용은 내송 찍어서 어디 손대서 말이야.
So, other misdeeds approaching these in gravity, the repudiation of the excellent teaching, all of which have the full power to induce strong suffering in places such as the miserable realms. You will sap the life out of high status and certain goodness by increasingly distracting yourself from the remedies. So, one will not be able to achieve high status, rebirth into the higher realms, certain goodness, referring to either liberation or complete Buddhahood. Which is the nectar of the well-spoken teachings. Then death will overcome you and bad karma will lead you into a hot and unpleasant place among the strong and harsh sufferings of the miserable realm. So the non-virtue that you engage in will have great power. If you have this grasping at the impermanent as being permanent, your non-virtuous activities that one engages in will have great power if one engages in killing or I think Rinpoche said sexual misconduct. Any among the 10 non-virtuous activities, 3 non-virtuous activities of the body, 4 non-virtuous activities of the speech, and 3 non-virtuous activities of the mind. Any among these will have great power to have great consequence, and one will not be able to achieve these rebirth in the higher realms or liberation or Buddhahood because of this. And then one will be reborn as a result into the lower realms of cyclic existence, the harsh sufferings of those lower realms. And here it says you into a hot and unpleasant place, speaking of the lower realms. And then we find a quote from Arya Deva's 400 verses that is concordant.
Genjius, what the Jabon drum to Jaba. Jabon won't get that over Cheda, Cheda, Roa, Cheda, Cheda, Chechus, no name is Jadum to Cheda. Chewata, Cheda, do down, Chedal Chevaius, Cheda, do Zana, do Jama, Pombi do, Yomo do, and then Kare. Pombi du, Yomo du, she Kaza Chedag du, Chedag du Euro, du Chedag du de Tarani Marve, Chedag du la Taw de Rabani, Chedag du Rabade, Ledan Yomo Ogichode, Chedag du Rabamarve, Ledan Yomo Ogiche, and the Shoah, Chedag du Rabache, Chedag du Tamade, Shidil Yomo because Mare Pasha Satan, Saba may be Lelatin, Lulabayo. Tema Dajun with Shesona, Ledan Yomo Joa Langmaro, Kui Joa Langmaro, Joa Jandaj Langro. Mare Pasha Satan Saba may Lulatin, Joa Langro. The Choa Euro. What the Chedak do Tomadi Samarba. Dajun was Dajumba Mumonsar, Kujo Langmaro. George Nagrota. Mare Baja sat Shidi Latene, George Nagro, Joel Cho Euro. What the Chedak Tommy Marva. That Chedak, Chedak Dul Chabaka Dosura. Chedak, Chedak Du. Chedak, Chedak Dul Chabajago or something. Chedak, and also Meshuare, Lashuare, and the Momishuaroda. Show the Jukaris, Jumara. Jun then the Kunu Papi Damba the Marva. The Kunu Papi Dambos. Then Kunu Papi, Lege Kunu, Nomo Kunu Latene, and Jaguare, Shagu Marva. Show. Chedade, Lege Kunu, the Nomo Kunu Peche, the Jabba, the man was on the top. Jabba Londe, Chedade, Lege Kunjo, the Yomo Kunjo. Then Dunga Papi Dambos, then Dunga Papi Dambo, Dunga Damboro. Dunga and Rebi in San, Jokalat and Juarazana, then the Kunju Papi Dambo. Kunju Damba de Juamarva. That Lege Kunjo, the Yomo Kunju de Cheda home and also Chedas. And then Kala. Kala Jiden Songa Das, Kala Jiden Song Shosana, Sau Satin Sala, Sau Woodle Niwata, Ida to River, or to Shigoro. And the side in Metan, Salal and Hatu, Shigo Marbe. Cheda de Sau Satin Salason, on Jures, on Jugente, and the Legion to Yomo Kunyo de Samarve. Legion to Yomo Kunula Tene. Nyaba Shiguare, Ida Shiguare, Tundishanuare, Meshaguare, Lashingo Marbe. What the Lady Gunu de Gay and Lori to Hug, Chol Onjumude. Chedat Pejit Jam and Rosamare. Kamala Jiden Song, Sau Satin Sala, Salason J.
Sa Hula,
Sauji,
then
Satuji, Salas of Marbe. And Saugi, the Nasongi, Nason Onjure Shiguares, Sati Meshuare, Salal Hatu Shinwar, Jukares, na, Lady Kunju, Kunula Dene, Je Shinwu Marbe.
Okay.
What the Reba what Pasu Chuji Jason, Pasu Chuji Jason, one day shit and chill, vegetarian Jiroda. Kiruji, Pinja, Pasu Chuji Jason, what in Jebel, what in the Zunshata.
So now in the quote from Arya Deva's 400 verses, let's see something here. So in the quote from Arya Deva's 400 verses, I'll read the quote first. It says, what would be more dangerous than to sleep as though at ease while subject to the Lord of Death, ruler of the three worlds without a master? So here, the Lord of Death is referring to one among the five maras. So there are five maras: the mara of the aggregates, the mara of the afflictions, the mara of death. And that's where we got to, and that's what I was just looking up. The pombo, nyomon, sheta. The mara of death. What are the last two though? We're missing two.
Pombidu, Nomobidu.
So there are five maras in the. So we're missing two of them. They're readily available at any other time than right at this very moment. And everyone knows them involved in this conversation readily, but we're not remembering at this very moment. So that's okay. The Mara of Death, the Lord of Death, this is among the five Maras. Here this Lord of Death is referring to the Mara of Death. And really the Mara of Death occurs because of, when we look at the truth of suffering and the truth of origin, under the category of the truth of origin, there are two categories: karma, that is origin, and afflictions, that are origin. So these karma and afflictions are that which bring on the process of death. So all of the deaths that occur in the worlds, whether they are the worlds underground, the worlds on the ground, or the worlds above or higher than the ground, and those worlds would be referring to the hell and the hungry ghosts being under Dendru, the Niawa Yeda Dendru Saula. The Sahu Dendru Yin.
Sau dan Niawa Yeda to Marba. What to Shigoro. To Shia later Yomu Kunula Dene Shigoro.
So the
Satin Meshigoro. Tena later Yomu Kunula Den Shigoro. Shigo Marba. Quand la didn't song a das at what is it? Didn't song das. Then Cheda de Susuzuvaris. Cheda Susuzuvaris. Les Sususabaro. Let on Yomo Bukuno, no Susu, let on Yomo Bukuno.
So who is the creator of this Lord of Death, of this Mara of Death? It is the karma and the afflictions that are possessed. I was just asking if an underworld, under the earth being, if an animal, which category it was in. So regardless, we have those abiders of the world of the underground, on the ground, or higher than the ground, meaning the six realms of cyclic existence. Those who are abiding in the world are subject to the Lord or Mara of death. And what is this Mara of death? What is the origin? It is the karma and the afflictions that give rise to this death. There are Hinayana foe destroyers with remainder that are not subject to the process of dying and being born into cyclic existence because they no longer have the karma and the afflictions, but they have a remainder of some sort of imprint or remainder that makes them be reborn into a place other than that of cyclic existence. And why is it that they are not reborn in cyclic existence? Because there isn't this death, because there are not karma and afflictions that would give rise to the experience of cyclic existence again. So even though this Hinayana foe destroyer still has this remainder of aggregates, there are no longer the karma and the afflictions that would give rise to rebirth in cyclic existence. So all of the realms within cyclic existence arise in dependence upon this karma and the afflictions. And we find this discussion in a textbook by Basu Chuji Jetsun, a great Galupa master who was a brother of Gyaltsabje, Kirtubje, Kirtubje's relative. Baso Chuji Gyaltsen was Kirtubje's relative, root disciple of Lama Tsongkhapa. Kirtubje's root disciple of Lama Tsongkhapa.
Kala Jiden Songa Das, the Shechu Jishe, Kala Jiden Songas, Jiden Songa Sondu, and later Yomobatege, Jiden Sau Satin, Salason, no jogres, Sauge, Nyawata Yedatu Shigro. Te later Yomobukunula than Shinowar, Satin Meshaware, Meshawatre, take Joshi waters, Fashion water, Had Shawadea, later Yomovala ten Shinowars.
So all those inhabitants of the world, whether they are below the ground, whether they are hell or hungry ghost beings, or above on the ground humans, or above the ground gods and so forth, they are all subject to death because of an origin, that is karma and the afflictions. So in dependence upon the karma and the afflictions, they are subject to death.
That Cheda the Rani Cheda Zoya the Rank Zuvaris. Numusu Jul Cheguare, Luigi Deba, the Nagi Deba to Susu Sagur, Rani said things in Cheda.
So it's the
she put Mason Dule. And then I said, Lady Kunju to Yomo Kunju to Sagore. Magenda Jiku, Lady Kunju to Yomo Kunju was logging your mothers. She will miss what they
So we are the ones that accumulate the karma and the afflictions. It isn't someone else accumulating them for them. If we were to say show someone else other than ourselves that is creating these karma and afflictions, we wouldn't be able to produce this. There is no external element or being external anything creating this. It would be karma, and our karma and our afflictions are accumulated or created by us individually. There's no external accumulator.
So Cheda changes in the Nyawabal Dubutan, the Sukin to Tudigan, or Tanichi Yoris, or Tajana Kanzamar, Kanzarota, Nyawabatus Su, Tudigan, New Legan, changes the Marba, change. Tajina Kanzaro. Jazi Saji Suishi, Masuta Jelation, then the Tajina, Descension to be smooth. Jazi Saji, Nyawa Jazi Saji. That's how we are. The Suizores. Sazi Saji Suishi, Masuta Jelation. And the Yawabala Kazure. Zun Zebutan Mamutuamendra. Jar Shinduna Mutakan, Tulton, Yalu to Trenchak Susha. Told the young man, Magilton again. Masuta da Vegeta Zunian Remendra, Le Wanki. Permit you don't want tone. Until the Zubal Dunganium. Masuta da. Diane Pashakaji does that. Nearly Shenji or Shenji, Niobal Tin on the king. Policies on the Kusu to the Jura. Take a Shenji Java Ina. Ida Java Matu, Nyon persuasion to Gomaris. Ida is local, she is there. Shenji Sheba, Ida is never Matu, Nyon persuasion, Medivishers. Luchurum Machig, Gogomatagate, Kunji 13 euro, Kunji 13 or 10 Jim. Nyobal, the policy in the
guardian of the hell realm.
What the Kanza Aris. Kanza in the Nyoba.
Okay, so there's a debate that goes on about the guardians of hell, and is the guardian of hell being, or a hungry ghost being? Then the Jawa. I'm just trying to find I've missed obviously the connecting point. So I apologize. They are a person. They're
제단은 가서 시다 신지 제단하고 로주지서 어떤 시다 지고 또 살롱을 당고도 다 근데
So there's many things that have to be thought about. So in the 400 verses, it speaks of the subject of the Lord of Death, and the Lord of Death is brought on by the karma and the afflictions. So there is a discussion that takes place: is the guardian of the hell realm a hell realm being, because they're not experiencing the hell realm environment? There seems to be higher than the hell realm being. So then there is discussion that this is a hungry ghost being. And again, I apologize for not having, or maybe that's just it, it's just about the karma. But regardless of what that being is categorized as, it is the karma and afflictions that bring about the death. So it says, while the subject of the Lord of to the Lord of Death. That's speaking of the Mara of death, which is brought about by karma and afflictions, the suffering of origin.
다 제자비 칸라 제된 송가스 어디 체다 말이야. 체다 조스나 대답이 체다 되게 제된 송을 얹어 버려. 서울 얹어 버려. 녀와다 이다도 쉬고로다. 체다 인데 치주 임베시다. 이서봐. 치주 사딘 얹어 메시고로 메시와데 대주시발된 신호로 얹어던 터에
Shiju.
사시고로 사시와데 내가 너무 근육을 신호로
So all the beings of the world are subject to the Lord of Death because of the origin of karma and afflictions that are origin. So this is the general cause of their death. So whether the ruler of the three worlds, the lower worlds of then the Nyawa Yida Dendru Kabiare Sahula.
Oh,
okay. Okay, I have my answer now. So the ruler of the three worlds. So the underground. So worlds here categorized would be underground, on the ground, or higher than the ground. So the hell realm and the hungry ghost realm, their death, they would be considered underground. Their death would be brought on in dependence upon the origin, that is karma and afflictions that are origin. So this would be the first world. Now my question was, is an animal, which world is an animal in? On the ground or under the ground? And Rinpoche said, more animals seem to be under the ground, such as the fish in the oceans and things under the earth and so forth. But there are animals on the ground too. So that was just my question before. And so then those abiding in the world on the ground die in dependence upon the karma and afflictions that are origin. And those beings who abide higher than the ground, the gods and so forth, die in dependence upon karma and the afflictions. So it says, while to the subject of Lord of Death, ruler of the three worlds, himself without a master. This is what the three worlds is referring to, and the Lord of Death, death being the Mara of death and brought about by karma and the afflictions. So here the Lord of Death is speaking of the cause of death in this quote from the Aryadeva's 400 verses. So all among the worlds will die because of the causes are there of the karma and the afflictions. The causes of death are there. All those of the three worlds will die because the causes of death, which are karma and afflictions, will be present. So we ourselves are the ones who accumulate this, are creators of the Lord of Death. We accumulate our karma and afflictions, and this is the second noble truth, superior truth, the superior truth of origin. There is no statement that others accumulate these karma and afflictions for us. We are the only ones who accumulate these for ourselves. In Basu Chuji Jetsen's commentary, we find this.
진지된 손을 가지고 그래서 사고 사딘 살아줄래 가지고 여자 안에 대여진도 여대 내진이로 나타나 줄을 되나 되네 그 주제발 되네 되네 시그래 니와를 제가 예달 쪽에서 정도 인지를 말이야.
Then there's a quote from the guide to Shantideva's engaging the Bodhisattva's deeds. I will have to depart, leaving everything, but not knowing this, I have committed various sins for the sake of friends and foes. So we'll end here. And thank you very much, everyone, for coming. So please think about these things. And we'll do the concluding mandala offering and dedication prayer. The fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the four continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this as a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure land. I dedicate whatever virtues I have collected for the benefit of the teachings and of all sentient beings, and in particular for the essential teachings of Venerable Zandrapa to shine forever. I send forth this jeweled mandala to you, precious Guru. I dedicate all this virtue to emulate the knowledge of the Manjushri and likewise Samantabhadra as well. With whatever dedication is praised as supreme by all the conquerors who traverse the three times, I also dedicate all my roots of virtue for the sake of auspicious deeds. In that pure land surrounded by snowy mountains, you are the source of all benefit and happiness. All-powerful Avalokiteshvara Tenzin Gyatso, may you stay until samsara's end. I pray for the long life of the precious Khensur Wandak, upholder of scriptural and realizational doctrines, spiritual friend who trained extensively in the 5 great philosophical texts with exceptional wisdom and perseverance. Tuji Rinpoche Kutsi Shabi Denunan.